Yeah, so we can see that it takes a snail to start this um concept on the law of torts. It's a very, very interesting case actually. So it's about loving your neighbors. It's about you do have responsibility as a responsible human being. You have to understand that your actions or inactions or omissions to act will actually cause your neighbor, to suffer some loss. You see, so neighbors is not like just somebody staying next door, but somebody who has some form of relationship to your actions. Okay, and there are many things that needs to be considered lah. So it's not like suka hati we can sue people for in the law of tort as well. You see, I mean, otherwise, we're going to have a society that is full of legal cases. So like what Lord Macmillan says, you have to be able to they must have context, and in that context, your actions will actually cause some form of uh, damage lah, in that sense lah, and then only also if your actions also need to fulfill some reasonable standard as well. So even if it's not like anything and everything your action can do will cause some problem, sometimes it causes problem, but it's what everybody is doing, like the standard is there, you have already done up to certain standard, then it should be no responsibility can be incurred lah, in that sense lah. So there are the first ground under this law of tort, okay, whether you can be sued for negligence or not, is based on the duty of care. So duty of care, like what Lord Macmillan was saying, that there must be that duty there. So if you have that duty to your neighbor, you see, so the idea here is to have that duty, and that can be explained in a few manner. In four areas are basically. Number one is foreseeability and proximity. Proximity is very difficult to establish. So not only the court will definitely, if you want to establish whether you have a duty, definitely its proximity is number one. Proximity is about, do you have a relationship here? Is that person considered your neighbor? That kind of idea. So let's say, if I'm a car driver, so I drive a car, I drove somebody, I knocked somebody down, there was an accident. So of course the proximity between me and that particular person who suffered loss is there. You see, I have that responsibility, I have the duty to be careful, but I actually run into him. But then after the accident, somebody else drove past, and then they saw a pool of blood, and then they started to see, I got shot, I fainted, I sang, thank so much blood on the floor. So then she wants to sue me as well as a cause of the accident. So is there a proximity here? Well, that is a bit too far, you see. So in that sense, there is no foreseeability as well. So foreseeability and proximity, proximity is like they in the English word, proximity is a distance. How far are you? There are sometimes it's physical distance, but sometimes it's that duty kind of distance. You cannot jump like 5 generations away and try to sue somebody, in that sense, because it is impossible that I would know that, my action, somebody would drive past and fainted because of the blood, you see. So that is a bit too far-fetched, like what we call a bit too forced, like in that sense. So foreseeability and proximity, it needs to be established. So number one, proximity is there a relationship, and how close is that relationship? Like once you move in and help somebody or do something to somebody, straight away there is a proximity already. Okay, that is the most direct one. But there are some cases whereby the proximity is not obvious, and it would take a bit of effort to really look into the fact that there is this relationship, that the injury by that person is also your duty. You see, so it's always one of the hardest to establish. So when you want to sue law or tort, it takes time to establish this. Of course, if it's a very direct one, it's very easy, like contractor with subcontractors, contractors with workers, and contractors with the house buyer, with the end users. So those sort of proximity will get further and further away, but there is a proximity, you see. It's very clear, that sort of proximity. And of course, there must be a possibility, meaning that when you're doing your duty, if I'm an engineer, I have to calculate my beam, I have to calculate bending moments, I have to calculate shear force, I have to calculate deflections, it's the basic things that I need to do. My calculations need to cover all these things. But why did you miss out on one thing? So you miss it out. You don't know that it may cause some failures, man. You see? So foreseeability is about the ability to foresee the damage. Some foreseeability is really too far-fetched. How would I know? This is so far away, So let's say a doctor trying to help somebody. When he comes in and helps somebody fainted on the ground, and then so you as a doctor, you come and help him. So you start to do this resuscitation and what do you call that pumping of the heart thing? I forgot what is the name of that action. Yeah, so and then suddenly when you do the action, okay, you actually broke his ribs, for example. I'm just trying to imagine the case here. So then he got a broken ribs because you're trying to help him. Is there a possibility here? Okay. So basically the action definitely that you're doing it really hard, pumping really hard. There is a chance that you will damage other parts of his body. But you really care to resuscitate the person. So meaning that there is a possibility. So maybe, the claimants may be able to sue, him for damaging his ribs, even though he saved his life, you see. Yeah, I mean, it sounds a bit ridiculous in the case, but then that makes the society very sick if that happens, you see. So that means that professionals becomes more and more cold. The world becomes more and more cold. You don't want to help anybody anymore because your actions, when you're helping somebody, causes sort of another harm, but then that will actually create another impact on yourself, and people start to get away from this sort of idea, so they don't want to do it anymore. You see, so but if the possibility is to be too much, like too impossible, you see, so that you need to put that into the test of possibility. It's one of the objectives. So it means that is it at the reasonable foresight of a man? If a doctor, you know that you're doing so hard, pumping so hard, you will definitely hurt this person, then that is a possibility there already. So it's not the foresight of the defendant, the foresight of the professional, a reasonable man, people in your industry, like my designer. If I didn't do shear force diagram design, or I didn't operate on certain thing in the machines, for example, for those in mechanical and manufacturing. So you don't turn on something, it's foreseeable that you will break the whole production line, or somebody will get injured after that, or fire can be created. So you kind of know that it may happen, but you are willing to take the risk and take the chance. And that foreseeability is there. So foreseeability is about whether you would think that some damage can happen. So if there is a possibility that you follow by, another thing is the damage must be claimed when it occurs. So after a period of time, you cannot come back and claim it anymore. And then the idea of proximity, whether the relationship is really there or not, that is very, very important as well. Okay. So this is the first two parts of whether the duty of care is established. And the third part is about policy, just and reasonable imposition, meaning that is it standard? Is it standard? Is it reasonable? And then, of course, like I said, too much of law or tort, we don't want people to get into a fact that, we become a very cold society, that we are careful with everything that we do, including helping people, including lending a hand when it's necessary, you see. So, of course, there are some public policy involved. So let's say if it's a public service duty like doctors, medicine, police, fires, authorities, education, teachers, social work, people who are carrying out these public duties, we would generally be very careful in suing them in that sense. Yeah. Wait, I'll go for another slides before to explain this bit